year, and one that really came down to just Bortlesing it up. And I don't think that's going to be an issue this time.
He won't be Bortlesing it up because he's now in Los Angeles, where I'm sure it's also sunny. And, good for Blake. Brought us that AFC championship, or at least was also there. And I'll always appreciate that. But now Foles is going to be Folesing it up. And, I appreciate that you said that the game didn't seem as far away as the score says. And that is true. And if you watch the game, you probably felt that way. As a Jaguars fan, though, watching that one, I could tell throughout, like, this was going to be kind of a rough day. And it was. But it's a new season and new quarterback under center.
Yeah, so, just real quick down memory lane. Interestingly, so I just pulled it up. So the Chiefs have played the Jaguars 4 times since 2010, and they're 4-0 against the Jaguars in the past decade. But what's interesting is that the Chiefs have had a different quarterback in every single one of those games, and the Jaguars have had 3 different quarterbacks in those 4 games. One we just mentioned, Blake Bortles. Pop quiz, can you name the other Jaguars quarterbacks?
Oh, yeah, you said, but since 2010 is the first game in 2010? You say 3 others?
So two others.
Gabbo?
Yep. American hero. Real
American hero. Okay, is the other one not Captain Chad Henne?
It was not. It was NFL legend Todd Bouman.
Todd Bouman, I think, at least is how I remember it, who also, I think, played for the Chiefs and every other team in the NFL. Todd Bouman was the man that the Jaguars would call when they had like 7 quarterback injuries, and he was just playing with his kids if he has any at home and not practicing football for years. And they'd be like, hey, you want to come? And he'd be like, yep, let's suit up and start against the Chiefs, apparently.
Yeah, and the 4 Chiefs quarterbacks, some of them are kind of predictable. Everyone remembers, of course, Pat Mahomes last year. Alex Smith had one of those games. Matt Castle, of course. But in 2016, in injury relief for Alex Smith, it was Nick Foles who barely held on for a win against the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah.
And I think it actually required a Bortles interception at the end to kind of seal it. But yeah, so I'm going to henceforth refer to Nick Foles as former Chiefs backup quarterback Nick Foles. To see now.
Wonderful. I will refer to him as Super Bowl MVP Nick Foles, and we'll carry on from there.
Well, there's a lot of really interesting matchups in this game. And again, like I think, that game, if Bortles hadn't have turned over the ball 5 times in that game last year, we would have been looking at a much closer matchup because it actually was statistically the worst game of Mahomes' MVP season. He had 0 passing touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He ran one in for a touchdown and actually was moving the ball well. But just like the pure box score, that was his worst game statistically. And it's kind of crazy to think about. He had in the other 15 games in the regular season, 50 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. So, clearly there's some things that Jacksonville is going to be able to do defensively against the Chiefs. How confident are you that you're going to be able to hold on against, the very vaunted, all the speed that the Chiefs are throwing out there, all that kind of stuff?
Well, that is the marquee matchup, and maybe the game comes down to the Jags offense against the Chiefs defense or something, but people are tuning in for Mahomes versus the Jaguars defense, a defense that finished, I believe, top 5 still last year, even though it didn't have the same energy and, sort of swagger as they did in 2017, but they were still very good. And now we had Josh Allen, which is a really, really nice piece. It appears anyway. Preseason wrecked it. It's preseason, so we'll see how he does his rookie year. So Tyreek Hill always is just a nightmare because of many things, but his speed is it's impossible. It doesn't look like a real person out there sometimes. And him and Kelsey offered just a devastating sort of duo. So to me, I actually look at the run game because it's going to be different, and I know they added a new guy in the backfield there. My biggest not even concern. I'm the most curious about what you think about the Chiefs' running game, because if any defense is equipped to stop a passing offense, it's the Jaguars. How do you think the running game is going to fare this week and this year?
I think it's going to be a running back by committee, but the big thing is that, there's been a lot of opinions about, the signing of Shady McCoy, as you were alluding to there over the weekend. His stats were not great in Buffalo last year, but I think, the big difference, but obviously in terms of scenario, is that he was the focal point of the offense in Buffalo for so many years. They were always stacking the box against him because they had no passing game, and they also didn't really have any run blocking up there. That's why they overhauled that whole offensive line this offseason. So, I think you're looking at an entirely different scenario with the Chiefs where nobody's going to be stacking the box against the run on Mahomes, or if they do, thank you very much. That's not going to be a winning strategy. And basically, Andy Reid, what he does best is finding ways of getting all of his players the ball in space, and that includes especially his running backs. There was some great stats that came out. There's kind of this big argument that Ben Baldwin did this whole treatise on how that's actually the most inefficient play in the NFL is throwing passes to running backs. And he charted it and it's really inefficient for every team except for the Chiefs. And the Chiefs are way up in this different quadrant of the whole chart because Andy Reid's one of the few coaches that actually schemes up passes to running backs. He really values getting running backs the ball in space, and he can do it really effectively. I think McCoy is going to be just one more guy who can do that really well for them. So I think that's going to be interesting. And I think, all of those guys, McCoy, he doesn't have his top-end speed anymore, but he can move around well in space. You have Damian Williams, who ran a 4.4 at his pro day coming out of college, and you see that on tape sometimes when he has the ball in his hands. They'll probably try to line him up wide and do stuff like that. They always put Kelsey out in the slot wide. They have a lot of things they can do to create weird mismatches and manipulate the defense. And that's what I think is going to be some of the interesting matchups, because we know that the Jaguars defense is overall very good, and the Chiefs offense is overall very good. But it's really about finding some of those depth matchups. It's not just about, Ramsey versus Tyreek Hill, although that is going to be a fun battle to watch. It's going to be, okay, once you get down to guys like McCole Hardman, who also ran 4.3 and showed out a lot in preseason, him against your third cornerback, or when they get, Damian Williams lined up out in space with a safety or a linebacker, having to follow him around, all that kind of stuff. And I think it's a similar issue on the other side where, for the Chiefs, they did a lot to improve this defense, especially up the middle, but cornerback is still this big glaring weakness on the Chiefs defensive side of the ball. And the one thing that makes me feel a little bit better about it is I'm not sure that the Jaguars really have the weapons to test it. You're at Dede Westbrook, Marquise Lee, and Chris Conley as your top three wide receivers. Against our crappy corners, I'm not that worried about that. And it seems like that, the Nick Foles Jags offense wasn't that great in preseason. Am I wrong on that?
Well, the Nick Foles Jags offense, you only got to see for a quarter in one preseason game. They got one touchdown, one interception. So I don't know. That's why I'm really excited about this week one, even more than usual, because the real team hasn't really been on the field and took the whole Sean McVay method of just not playing your players and we'll keep them healthy. And it was successful. Let's talk some of those deeper matchups, actually, on both sides. On defense, a couple names I say to look for in this game is going to be Ronnie Harrison, our safety, second-year guy. We'll see who he's covering. And then Quincy Williams, the rookie linebacker, had an injury issue, but he was getting a lot of buzz in camp. And I know we lost Telvin Smith, but now we have Quincy Williams, who apparently has some lightning speed for a linebacker. And it's just going to be interesting whether he's covering guys or rushing probably won't be rushing the passer. I don't know. It's going to be interesting against just the running backs and whoever else. And speaking of passes to running backs, whether efficient or not, Leonard Fournette's going to catch a ton of balls this year. That seems to be the plan. That's a little bit we saw in preseason. And I'm interested to see how we'll do against any defense, but specifically the Chiefs this week. You say the corners are weak. Top three receivers, I like how you mentioned Marquise Lee, but it's actually going to be Dede, Chris Conley, and DJ Chark. And Marquise Lee is sort of returning from an injury, and I don't really know where he's going to fit in once he gets back. But Dede Westbrook seems to be the guy and have a connection with Foles. The Jaguars' whole plan is we got Nick Foles to make people better. Now we'll see if he's Kansas City Chiefs backup Nick Foles or Super Bowl MVP Nick Foles. But theoretically, the reason that we got him and got rid of Bortles is that he'll at least be able to elevate the other guys a little bit and put the balls in place where they need to be. And it seems like Dede and Conley are just going to be sort of steady guys. So they won't test them like they're Antonio Brown or Julio Jones, but I think it's going to be a little bit tougher of a battle than you anticipate if they're not very strong in the corner position.
All right, so it's getting around to prediction time. And I talked up how, these two teams, both of which were in AFC Championship games in the last couple of years, while this should be close, I also, though, I would be much more worried about this game as a Chiefs fan if this was happening deeper into the season. But the fact that it's week one gives me a lot of encouragement, just because, especially these last few years, Andy Reid always spends a whole offseason just drawing up crazy plays, adding wrinkles to his offense. And lately, especially, like every single year on week one, the Chiefs will unveil something that nobody in the league has ever seen before, and it takes the league about a month to adjust to it, whether it was, these kind of crazy triple options, shovel passes, and all sorts of stuff. And they always come out firing on all cylinders, and usually the team in week one doesn't have a great counter for it, and it doesn't happen for a while. So that's the thing that makes me think that if the Chiefs defense can be improved, and especially the better against the run, I think it sounds like you guys are going to be a little more run first, and if they can get former Chiefs backup quarterback Nick Foles into a lot of 3 and longs, unlike the way they weren't able to get off the field last year, and they have some wizardry that gets them a few quick scores. This could, I think it'll be close for a lot of the game, but I think the Chiefs pull away towards the end. Ends up being a 31-17 Chiefs victory.
Wow. Okay. I think first and foremost, I think this game is going to be close. I'll say right off the bat that you mentioned the Chiefs' history against the Jaguars, recent history, and I feel that too. I saw the Chiefs come up in the schedule, and I'm like, it feels like we haven't beaten them for years, and as you stated, we haven't. I will not be making this pick from the head. I will be making it from the heart, because I do sort of see a Chiefs victory in my head, sadly. However, I'm gonna mitigate the Andy Reid week one factor, which is huge and I know I've been hearing about the heat in Kansas City and all this stuff, but weather permitting, as long as it's sunny, which it seems like it will be, the Jacksonville heat in September is no joke. And I've been there, and I'm from Las Vegas. It is a factor. So I'm going to say the Andy Reid week one and the Jacksonville Heat kind of balance each other out, and then we just play good old-fashioned football game. And just for the sake of it's week one, there's hope all around. We have Yannick Ngakoue, Calais Campbell, and Josh Allen all rushing the passer on the same side. Mahomes, sure, he's probably going to have another MVP caliber season. That's what we saw last year. I don't expect any sort of drop-off except maybe in numbers for Mahomes. But with those three guys rushing the passer, just wreaking havoc in Mahomes' face all day long, I think the Jags will tough it out and will win 24-20 Jaguars.
All right. It is definitely going to be one to watch, folks. Outside of the score, I wish you a good game and hope neither of our MVPs get hurt.
That's right. MVPs just battle toward the end of the year in the championship game. I'll take that.
Battle of the SuperFan.
All right, Pod, it is now time for the much-awaited early Monday Night Football game coming to you at 7 p.m. Eastern from the lovely city of New Orleans, Louisiana, in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. They were going to play host to the Houston Texans. They, of course, being the New Orleans Saints, and I, Houston Texans James, am joined by the Saints superfan Chris. How are you doing today, Chris?
Hey, James, excellent. Ready to kick off this season for sure.
I think the chickens have finally come home to roost for me. As much as I've griped and kind of given the New Orleans Saints a hard time about how they've managed player personnel choices, contracts, etc., I'm now squarely in the people in glass houses should not throw stones. All that said, you guys are coming off I believe this was mentioned once or twice, a slightly disappointing end to your season, thinking that you could have gone further. So coming into their first game of the year, playing host, a 7-point favorite. How do you think